Well, good day. Well, today I'll be building the neck for my Enterprise model that I was talking about in my prior video. And here's the neck itself. And as you've noticed, it's got the connection for the harness and my 34 gauge wires. And they have little flags on them that tells me what they are. So at the end, when I go to hook up into the tandem control board, I know what wire goes where. That's an important little thing to keep in mind. Flag your stuff so you know what you're doing. Okay, and in this video, we're going to show you how we got to this end result with the harness and the extra lights. Okay, stand by. Here we go. Okay, here we are looking at the neck of the Enterprise, and we see the outside. I always add a little coat of some primer paint on it because, you know, as we do stuff in our modeling world, we always get some foreign material on the outside. This makes it easy to clean up, and it doesn't affect the plastic itself, and that's always easy to touch up at the finishing parts. Okay, we're also going to take a look at the inside. If you notice, I've added some black paint, 2 coats, black matte, and then a small coat of some primer white for reflective ability. And what that does is when the lights are in here and they're on, they won't be coming through on this side of the plastic. They'll just be coming through the window slots and the lenses that we want. Therefore, we'll get the look that we want and we'll achieve the goals we want. And we see here, we've got positions here and here to place our polar lights. We're also going to add lights above here and right in here, and that'll give us our backup lighting. So if anything ever happens to one set, the other ones will come on. So let me get the material out and we'll take a look at getting ready to do that. And with that, I'll be using my glue gun and my soldering iron. So those are 2 items that we'll be seeing in use. Okay, here we go. Okay, we have our stuff set out here and we're looking at our polar lights directions, and you can see for the neck here, they're showing that we want a connector of E and C to hold our lights. And here we have our connectors E and C and our lights. And we'll cut our lights to fit in where they go. And remember, you cut them where they're indicated because they come in sets of 3. So we want to make sure our cuts are always in the proper locations. So let me bring that up just a little closer for you. And here you'll see the connection pieces here. All right, and then you'll see it's got a little line that tells you where to make the cut. So that'll be an easy cut, and that's also the taps we want to use when connecting our power. In this case right now, we'll be using the polar light connectors, and I'll show you how to connect those up. Okay, I've added one of these little LED strips into the polar lights holder, and you can see that the little tabs that hold it in make contact really nice. And you want to make sure that when you close these, you snap them all the way in so that they go nice and tight and your lights will stay in there. Now if you find that they resist a little bit, just back it off a little bit, just gently move it out a tiny little bit, and then bring it back and give it another try until you get your contact. And there we are, nice and clean. Now they come with tape on the back where they say take the tape off. I like to leave the tape on as a little bit of extra protection, and that's where my glue gun will come in, because what I'll do is I'll use my glue gun to add some glue back here. So when I put my lights in and I glue it into place, the light isn't relying on the tape. It'll be using the glue from the glue gun to hold this in place, and that'll be a permanent connection because that just won't fall off. And then also the back of my LED strip isn't exposed to anything. It's kept nice and clean. I like that a little better, and that's just the way that I do it. So let's add another LED strip in between these 2 here, always making sure that our positive is in the correct lineup. And up on these LED strips, there'll be a little writing on the side. It'll show you the positive and the negative. And in this case, my red is my positive, my black is my negative. So I always want to make sure that my red and my blacks line up when I put my LED strips together. So that's what I do. So this is how you keep your polarity working correctly throughout your lighting system. So I need another LED strip here. So once again, as an example, cutting it is you just find the little line between the 2 copper tabs, give it a nice little steady cut, and you have your LED strip. So here I'm going to attach another one here. And like I said, it had a little writing on it. You can see it. It's kind of little, it's very small, but you'll see it with your eyes when you're putting it together. And these little clips have little slots in them, and you got to just find that little slot key, slide them in, make sure you get the underneath. Once again, closing the gate all the way till it closes, and if it doesn't, there we go. Now we've put this together, but we want to make sure it's going to work before we actually attach it and everything. So let's put our power supply to it and give it a test. One of the things I do is, as you know, the power supply is not going to connect from the polar lights clip into the alligator clips off the power supply. So I always have a little pair of jumpers that I can stick in to power up. So let's put our jumpers in and test our lights. Okay, so we've hooked up our little jumpers here into our connectors. We got our LED lights in the area and everything. And so let's see now if they're going to turn on. So let's hit the power button. Oh, look at those nice lights. There we go. So let's get these installed. While the glue gun warms up, I'm going to set the windows in and then frost them a little bit so they gather light a little better. Okay, I've put in the windows. And as you can see, I've frosted them up just a little bit because I like that little bit of extra light catching. We're not trying to look inside of these. They're, you know, it's hard to see anyway, but I like that little bit of look. You don't have to do this. It's a personal choice. Okay, and we're not going to tempt Murphy, even though this is a very, very well-built model that holds together really well. We're going to just drop a little bit of our glue, hot glue, in a couple little corners, just to help it hold. And it doesn't take much because you want to be very careful as to not melt your model while doing this, because you are using a very, very hot substance. But this just holds it in place as you move it around and people look at it and you play with your model or just show it off. Okay. Now that we have our windows in place and we've got them set and everything, and they're going to stay in there because our glue is hardening up very nicely, we're going to cut them free of the frame now because we need to be able to put in the lights, and the light harness is going to be a little bit too tight for us to do it at a distance, so we're going to cut it free, and we'll do it free-handed, so we'll show that too. Okay, I've glued in the lights. I found with this kit though, the lights with the harness are a little bit tough. They don't quite fit just where they say, so as you can see, I've moved it a little bit at an angle and changed them up a little bit, but we'll see how they work when we get done hooking them all up and everything. So let me get them put together and we'll see how it looks. Okay, we've installed our polar lights in their appropriate places, and now I'm going to add some more lights from the Tenna control board, and you can see it comes with a nice long strip of lights and everything, so we'll be cutting the size. And putting those in, I'll be using my soldering iron. And I suggest that when you use a soldering iron, you practice with it for a little bit first, because soldering can be a little bit tricky sometimes. And if you don't like the tip, you change it by just unscrewing, removing, getting one of the ones that came with it, the extra ones, putting on top of the rod. You can see, you just slide that back on, put it right over the top, screw it in place, snug it. Doesn't have to be super tight, and then you'll have the tip that you can use. And like I said, you should practice with the tips that come to find out what you're most comfortable with, and then you can begin soldering in using small, in this case I'm using 34 gauge wire, into the neck of the USS Enterprise to put in the backup lighting, or just to add even more lighting. Okay, so I'll be installing that and we'll take a look and see how that goes. Okay, so I've cut my LED strip, and I cheat a little bit when I do my soldering. Is I'll use a little piece of tape and I'll hold down the LED strip, and I'll line up my wire onto the tab it's going to go, and use another piece of tape to hold that in place. Like I said, soldering can be a little tricky, so this is my little cheating techniques to make it work. And like I said before, the 34 gauge wire is insulated, so the tip does need to be cleaned off. So I use a stirring stick from painting, hold it down on the end of the wire, and pull the wire back. And I do this several times until I see exactly nice wire underneath, and there it is. So that's nice and clean. Now I'm going to prep for soldering. Okay, I've got my wire in place, and now we're going to see about trying to get some solder onto these. So here we go. And we got solder there. Now we're going to hit this side, and we're soldered on there. Maybe just a little bit more. Okay, here we go. We can see that we've got our beads holding our solder onto our LED strip, and now what I'll do is I'll hook it up so that we can test the lighting. Okay, so once again I'm using my alligator clips off of my power supply, and now I'm gonna see if I can't find that little connection. Oh, look at that, lights just came on. Isn't that nice? Okay, so we know this is ready to put in. So this one's done, so let me do another one and then we'll get the neck back out and we'll get that in place. Okay, I've installed the LED strips, and you can see one here and here in positions that were easy to do. And what I did was use my glue gun, and I just added a little dab, and then you wait a few seconds before you apply it. You do not want to damage your LED strip by putting it on the glue while it's still really, really hot. Let it cool a little bit, apply your LED strip, and it'll stick on really nicely, as you see here. So now we've been all glued in. You can see that everything's nice and snug. Nothing's going to be falling out as we rotate it or move it or bring it somewhere to show it off with our friends, or just to enjoy it in the house or whatever. Okay, now we'll move on and take a look and see the finished product. Okay, I've just put the body together. I don't want to glue it because we're going to be running lines down through it and stuff, but let's take a look. Okay, that looks nice. Let's get a better look. Okay, we have our lights nicely installed, and you can see how bright it is looking down into the neck. So let's go to the side and look at our windows. Oh, very, very nice. Nice and clean throughout the whole thing. Nice uniform look. And what's nice too is you can see why we paint the black on the inside is we have no bleed through, just the light through the windows. Looking very, very nice there. Take a quick look at the other side. Oh, that's very nicely done. We make a little shadow. And you can see just the lights light up, no bleed through the model. So there's our neck, nice and lit up. All finished, ready for install. So this part of the project is done. Let's move on to the next.